go. What's up? What's up, gatekeepers? How you doing? Oh, look, maybe we could do shadow puppets. Maybe we'll save that for later. I have to figure it this way, but I'd be backwards, inside out. No, that's not going to work. Never mind. I'll work on that. So, how's everybody? Welcome to Monday night. So, it's Monday evening here. It's 8 o'clock my time. I don't know what time it is where you guys are, but I'll tell you, we've got some gatekeepers out there that they're just starting tomorrow. And it's crazy to me. Time zones have always messed me up. I can remember being really, really little and actually thinking, if I dug a hole deep enough, you could get to China. That's what they used to say that all the time. What are you going to do? You're going to keep digging a hole till you meet somebody from China or whatever. I guess they don't say that much anymore. Probably not allowed to. Who knows? So anyway, welcome in. Gatekeepers, if this is your first time here, welcome in. Please hit the like. Go out, hit it, and come back. I'll wait. I appreciate it so much because it's a free way to help this channel, because Lord knows this channel is all the help it can get. So this is being honest. So please do that. And thank you to everybody who puts comments in the videos after they've posted. And thank you for those of you who share and those of you who support it on other social media and just come here and hang out and be a part of this wonderful live chat. So welcome in. I love you all. So, yeah, right, Aunt Edna? I can remember. Don't you remember the adults always saying that when you're out digging a hole or at the beach, or out in the backyard? And what are you going to do to go all the way to China? So when you're a little toddler, you start believing that. It's like, how far down do you have to go? We used to dig holes out there and then line the hole with like a garbage bag and put rocks around it and build a pool for like Barbie and Ken and G.I. Joe and have a kegger. And sometimes G.I. Joe would have a little bit too much and Ken would not fare too well, or Barbie always like with G.I. Joe. Or my cousins would come over and they were all older boys, and Barbie would get kidnapped. It's just, I wonder if people think about that when they're making dolls and things like that, is like how they think it's going to be used and how they actually wind up being used, because I was never really a Barbie girl. And I can remember one year Talking Barbie came out, and my mom and I were in a place where we had a lot of different Christmas parties to go to or whatever, and it was real big that year. I mean, Talking Barbie was everywhere. It was like the Cabbage Patch doll when it came out, or anything else. And I think I got 3 of them, and they had a malfunction where the legs would fall off. The left leg would fall off of every Barbie that was made that year in a design flaw. So I had a bunch of one-legged Barbies because everywhere I went, they had like an extra Barbie for that kid that showed, which was nice. There's no doubt about it. But my mom thought I was just pulling all the legs off my Barbies, and, but no, it's just, and it turned out to be a thing. So that was one of the times I think my mom worried about me, because I was a tomboy and climbing trees and doing stuff like that. It's like, don't you want to wear a dress? And he goes, nope. You can't run. What if something's chasing you? Sneakers and jeans and, that kind of thing. Anyway, I digress. So my day has been a little crazy, but not in a bad way, just in a, okay, it's going to go this way. And then, wait. So I'll just tell you what happened. So I thought I had a guest tonight. Terrific. And I won't say who, but you're going to be excited when they finally get here. But I put the date right on the calendar, but I must have looked at it right. Anyway, I thought something else was going on. So I was taking care of a lot of paperwork and some other stuff and some crazy business stuff, which all got sorted, but it took time. Phone calls and emails were involved. It was a freaking nightmare. So anyway, right about 1 or 2 o'clock, I'm like, I haven't got because we're going to, share some pics, and I got to make a slideshow, and they're going to send me links to some videos and some other stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't have that. So through all my emails, my junk box, my spam. So finally I got a hold of the person via text. They answered me. They're like, no, that's next Sunday. I'm like, oh man, my bad. I am so sorry. No problem. So I have like some shows that I put in the back end just in case. So we always have something. And I said, oh man, I'm going to do Keel because I don't know much about Keel. I know some surface stuff, but certainly no authority, as he would say. And I said, it's great because that's really, hey, Derek, welcome in, sweetie. That's really Steve's bag. And I'll just sit back and learn tonight. And I'll grab a couple of videos and grab some interviews. And I've got a couple other little things. There's a lot of stuff on Keel out there, in Forteans. And I was looking forward to learning a lot of stuff because I just do surface level things. And then my wonderful friend and buddy texted me, it's possible he got a little food poisoning. So let's send some, just a titch. He's okay, but a little green. So God bless him. And so send healing thoughts and love over to Mr. Stockton tonight. That's why I didn't put his name on the episode, the cover art, because I didn't want to tell people he was going to be here if I didn't think he was going to be. He's got the link if he feels good and he wants to pop in and say, hey, yada, 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 and pop back out. He told me to do that. So I gave it to him. It's possible he could do a cameo. And, but the thing is, I don't know anything about So you go, what do you do? It's like, whew, do I pull a last minute and try to play it off? That's not me. What do? I get on Lair, I get in there live, and I tell the gatekeepers the truth because I was going to learn tonight. So you guys are going to have to help me through this, and we're going to do this together. Barbie parts necklace. Yeah, that would be scary, Scott. Now, Mom would have sit me down and have a talk with me if I had done that, because at the time, scary. Yeah, at the time, I mean, I knew what that meant because I was reading all kind of war paperbacks, and I don't want to go there. But anyway, yeah, I was already in trouble because we were playing G.I. Joes with M80s and little firecrackers and stuff like that too. So we're a terrible little bunch. My cousins were something. But anyhow, so tonight, if you know about John Keel, and you can add to the conversation tonight, please put everything in. I saw Kat drop some stuff in the beginning, which was great. I have some things that I have, it's going to be a nice show, but I'm telling you up front that I was kind of learning too when I was putting this together. I'm like, man, I had no idea. And I got to be honest, I saw the Mothman Prophecy movie when it came out, and I've known about him all my life, Fate magazine and things like that. It just wasn't something I spent a lot of time on. I kind of tiptoed through it. And he's all through the decades of my life. I mean, we just lost him early 2000s, I believe. And, like I said, the thing is I know that Steve knows an awful lot about him because that's really Steve's. We've had some really cool conversations about that in the past. So I pulled up this one interview. I watched quite a few of them, and he had some, it seems to me, and again, I'm no authority. I keep saying that because you'll see that he had a little funny saying on his business cards about that. And you and I have always, we've always talked about that. It's like there's no experts. You might be well versed in a certain area or something like that, or be really strong in another area, but there's no broad brush experts. And I'd hesitate to say that there's any experts even in some offshoots, because everything keeps changing. But it seems to me that this gentleman had a theory about energies and everything being connected. Does that ring a bell with those of you that know a lot about Keel? Because I was listening to, like I said, some of the interviews he was doing and just learn, getting some surface information. And I'd really like to delve a little bit deeper on that. So I figure I'll probably will touch on that tonight with the interviews, and then when Steve gets back next Monday or whatever, we can ask him about it too, because this is obviously a very broad subject. So we'll just touch on it tonight if you guys are cool with that. And I'm going to go ahead and show the two interviews I got. One's really fun. It was when he was on David Letterman. I think it was 87, maybe something like that. And there's multiple ones of him in certain paracons and UFO conventions and stuff like that, right? So I didn't bring all those. I wanted to do a little smattering, but I found this one documentary and it's really good, and it mostly leans on the Mothman incident. And I will be honest, like I said in the beginning, know quite a bit about it. Most of it from talking to people like Steve, and learning about that. Because when I first saw the movie, I had not read the book, and I saw the movie, and I didn't quite get the whole dark, I don't know how to explain it. It was kind of very, it was very, dramatic as far as just spit it out. What's the big secret? What are they hiding? What's the trauma there? Other than we saw some, a being, and some people saw it. A double teenage couple. I think there were two couples out on a double date. Had that really traumatic experience seeing him, where he's running by the car, and the red eyes, and I was familiar with all that, but I couldn't figure out what all this dark foreboding. I think the time that movie came out, I was a busy mom of young kids. It was something I really wasn't grabbing. Now doing all this, I want to see it again, and I think I'd rather read the book first to see how Keel put it all together, and then how the movie kind of changed it. I think that would have been a better way of going about it. So how many people here in the chat are familiar, at least more than me, with Keel? Let me know in the chat, like hands up, or toss me some bacon, put a hand up, throw some bacon up there, and chime in during this. I see Glenn. Hang on, what's Glenn saying? Keel thought cryptids, paranormal, and UFOs were all connected, along with Jacques Vallée. Am I pronouncing that correct? Jacques Vallée were ahead of their time. This is what I'm picking up. I mean, I really wasn't. I knew about the Men in Black a little bit. I didn't know his thoughts on it as much as just talking about the Men in Black and the occurrences and experiences and the theories. And okay, good. Terrific, Glenn. Okay, so you guys put it in capitals so I can see it better, because with these bifocals and the way the light hits it, that's why you're always seeing me go like this, because it's very hard to focus in sometimes. So put it in capitals, and we'll stop. Hey, Froze, and you too, Froze. Great. So throw it in there, and Scott too. And everybody, throw in your ideas on this, because what we're going to do is the documentary is about, I think it's about 30 minutes. We'll play a little bit and stop it, talk about it, and then go on through and do it that way. Because as I was saying, now that I'm seeing what I'm going to show you tonight and studying for this episode a little bit, I was just going to throw questions at Steve, like, wow, let's get deeper into that. That sounds interesting. Deeper into that. That sounds interesting. I'll ask Steve, And I was like, man, I had no idea that it was this, this deep. If you had asked me earlier, before I did this today, uh, who he was, I could give you the gist, and I could tell you that he was a ufologist and a journalist and somebody who wrote freelance for, magazines, especially Fate magazine, read a lot of his articles. Mostly as a kid, very interesting. I read about the frogs, raining frogs, and I know he was a collector of those kind of things, very much like Steve in that, I think I must have thought that thought 75 to 100 times today, very much like Steve in that, kind of a parallel walk, and collector of stories and oddities and things like that, and so anyway, I knew about that, and I knew about some of the other things, and especially Mothman then had something to do with it. I didn't know he was there beforehand and was kind of digging around. And I didn't know it was such a experience over that vast amount of time. I thought it was a couple of weeks, or maybe a week or two before the bridge collapse that they were seeing this creature, and that it was more condensed. Had no idea it was this long. And I knew a little bit about, there might have been some telepathic, prophetic things going down there, because some people were having, dreams or downloads or warnings and things like that. And I thought that was the whole idea behind the darkness of the movie when it came out. You know which one I mean, with what's his face and what's her name. And I don't know what year that came out. Probably early 2000s, maybe. So, or late 90s. When did that come out? They'll say it in here. Don't worry about it. It's not important. So now that I'm seeing the way that John Keel and the people in this documentary described it, I'm like, wow, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was, and a lot deeper. And I think now I'm seeing almost how it connects in with some of the other things that Steve and I were talking about, and some great people that we've had on this show, where we've mentioned and talked about the humanoid figures in Chicago or in any other place. Now, in this documentary, I will say this. They are using the word, in some of them, banshee. And I want to go ahead and just put my thought out there and tell you that I think that's like a problem. I see where they're going with it, but after, talking to you guys and talking to Vixen and getting everybody's information and talking to other people, I'm more inclined to believe what we came up with on several other episodes ago. We were talking about the banshees. It's more of a harbinger of doom, but connected to a certain bloodline or family, more likely, but could very well be prophetic, harbinger of doom, someone who warns, and even in some cases protects or keeps away from people from harm. Just depends. There's lots of different stories. Jury's still out. Okay. But I think in this case, using that for the Mothman is kind of throws things off a little bit. So I wanted to say that ahead of time. See what you guys think about it. I don't think that's a good word. I would say more of quite possibly, amongst other things. I'm going to start with the harbinger of doom, or something that at least collects energy and helps do a buildup of that energy and somehow feeds off of that, as well as in some ways not so much orchestrates it, but definitely conducts some of that energy flow, either through the telepathic control, some of the other weird things that were going on that I really had no idea till tonight. So I think it'll still be fun. What's going on? Hang on. All right. So what I'm going to do real quick before we start, I want to go back and make sure I collect up And hello, everybody. If I miss saying hi to you. And Edna, it's so good to see you. I can't tell you. Maraid, wonderful to see you, babe. Ted, you know I love you. Vixen, Glenn, Kat, good to see you. I saw Bernice in here. Lulu Bell, how you doing, sweetheart? How you doing? It's good to see Sarah last night, too, and so many friends coming in and saying hi. You know, so many you think about, too. Hey, Derek, and definitely Scott and everybody else in here. If I miss you, it's just my eyes. It's not my heart. Okay? You know me. I'm goofy as all get out. Okay. So I think that's good right there. Hey, sweetie. Okay. What is Derek saying? Your thoughts on Jason Sands' whistleblower that came out public Saturday evening on Twitter Spaces. Derek, I don't think I know enough to really comment on that one. I think I know what you're talking about. Honey, there's so much going on so many levels, and you could probably pick 50 out of 100, and I could talk for an hour on them. And then the other, 50, I know just that much. And names I'm terrible with. If I saw a picture or knew what he was, what category he was in, really. Because gosh, there's so many whistleblowers right now. There's so much going on, dude. But hit me up. And if you have my email, listen, you guys ever want to send me stuff like that or ask me, just jump underneath the videos. And if it's something that you don't want to put under a video out in public, just send it to journeythroughthegate@gmail.com. And I check my email all the time, and I get a lot of them. So if I don't answer you, I'm not ignoring you. Just please, send it again or tell me here and I'll look for it. So I'm not sure. So I don't want to comment on the wrong thing there and go off on a tangent and go, 45 minutes in this direction and find out I'm talking about the wrong person. It's too late to do a Yui after that. I've seen me do it. I know me. Okay. Does this have to? In college, we had a guy on campus called Zeus. He wore a dress and had a Barbie necklace he wore. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. That's nice. That's I'm getting visuals. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So, Bobby Parson. Okay. Very nice. Now I get it. Okay. That one goes with the other one. I thought you were okay. It's fun. Good stuff. Okay. I'm trying so hard not to laugh. All right. Here we go. All right. Is there anything I missed on? Keel. Yeah, definitely, Glenn, ahead of his time. I'd like to get deeper into that, but I don't really even know enough about his theory to really comment on. I'm really going to have to dig into it maybe after I see the documentary again and we talk about it a little bit more. Okay. 75. Yeah, I did know that. And that came out. I'm in high school. I'm in, I was like in a heavy metal band and doing all kinds of stuff. I was in heavy metal band and chamber choir all at the same time, and drama club, and like 5 different art classes and all kind of other mess. So I knew when it came out, but I was probably right before Amityville Horror, and along with a lot of other stuff that was going on too. I mean, Helter Skelter was right around that time. I mean, shoot, we had Watergate, we had the Vietnam War, we had ecology, a gas crisis. What else? We had bell bottoms. We had guys in bell bottoms that had long hair. We had music. We had the bands. It was a lot going on then too. So there was, some things I missed. Hey, are you kidding me? How you doing, honey? Do you know anything about Keel? He had beads in his beard. It's like Blackbeard. Okay, so like I said, jump in. If I miss it, repeat it if you can, just copy, paste it, whatever. And thank you for dropping my email and my PayPal and their super chats and everything else. If you could spare $2, throw it up there. We appreciate it. If not, God bless you. It's like I always feel like singing that song. If you have a hey penny, hey, if you don't haven't got a, what's the words, Vixen? If you haven't got a wheat penny, a hay penny will do. If you haven't got a hey penny, then God bless you. You know what I mean? I always feel like that. It's the same thing. It's just be here, support us, love us, share it, comment, and spread good energy. That's all we ask. And thank you very much for that. Okay, so for Mr. Keel, if you don't know anything about him, and I hate using Wikipedia, but as far as just the basics, he is, they state him as being a journalist, a ufologist, it's hard to say, a ufologist, and a parapsychologist. And if you asked him in these interviews, he kind of not just says like he's a Fortean, and if you don't know what that is somebody that, the way he described it, follows Charles Fort. And I found this absolutely amazing. This guy spent so much time, the way Keel describes it, almost a lifetime of in the New York Public Library, just going through old newspapers and old science manuals and everything else he could find and books, and took down all of these odd occurrences and put them all together in books. And people that followed those things or looked at those things, like, why would it be raining rocks, or why is it raining raw meat over, Switzerland or wherever it was, frogs in France, and all these things, right? And when I heard that, I thought, man, that is something else. Can you imagine? You just get up and you walk down to the New York Public Library, and you go in, and you've got your favorite chair and your little green lamp, and you go in there and you start looking at all the odd occurrences over time, and you put them all together in a book. It's a heck of a way to do. And it'll put together a novel, right? But then you think also of dedicating your life to that. And in this interview I'm going to show, it's with Keel and David Letterman, which I always kind of liked back in the day when I would watch him. And now I look back and think, gosh, he was, he wasn't so much a cheeky monkey as he was just, kind of, he's a bit of an ass. But I got to tell you, I loved when I was a teenager watching him throw things off the roof. That was my favorite thing. You guys remember when he used to do that? He'd go up and he'd say, we've got, a truckload of ping pong balls we're going to throw off the studio roof, or cans of paint. It was so exciting. Do you guys remember that? You couldn't wait for it to fall and watch it splat. And I think the paint was my favorite color. My favorite one. Ping pong balls weren't bad. I used to like it too when he'd go across the street and buy sandwiches from the deli, or, things like that. But when he's trying to be, I don't know, it seems like everybody that's up there, a lot of people that I took serious, he almost was making fun of, but it was always great to see those people too stand their ground. And I think Keel was one of those. So let's watch that little video, and we'll watch that. We'll stop it. We'll come back. We'll talk about it. We'll do the next one. That's how we'll get through this. We'll get through it together. Are you with me? You're with me. I know you're with me. Okay, so here we go. You tell me if you think David Letterman's acting a little... let me see if this is the right one. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So here we go. John Keel, everybody. Gallagher. Yeah, that was a good one, too.
What that is from him. He is also the editor-in-chief of Pursuit magazine. Welcome, please, John Keel. John, how are you? So you're a Fortean, eh?
Oh, well, I've been trying to outgrow it. Actually,
what is a Fortean? It's spelled F-O-R-T-E-A-N. What is that?
Back in the early part of the century, there was a man named Charles Fort who spent his entire life in the New York Public Library, going through the old scientific journals and old newspapers. And he published a series of books about strange things that turned up in these old journals, like when it would rain frogs in France or red snow in Switzerland. He kept track of all these things, did a series of books, and we started calling these events 14 events.
I see.
And today we still keep track.
Now, the two examples you cited there, I've heard of raining the frogs, and it's always a matter of, it's either one, an old wives' tale. Remember the time it rained wives' tales? Or it's disputed in some, they can just say, well, there were frogs in the trees. When it rained, they jumped out.
Well, we have compiled a list of several thousand mysterious things that have fallen from the sky. They documented things. They include things like stone pillars, cannonballs, all kinds of strange things. In China, it once rained raw meat.
No,
and there's no explanation.
When in China did it rain raw meat?
Well, quite a while ago. It was in the 19th century.
Now, how is it that all the unexplained things took place in the 19th century or before?
They're still taking place.
Give me a recent unexplained thing, other than Amazing Al.
Every January and February, here in the Northeast, we have what we call skyquakes. They get into the papers sometimes. Now, recently, they've been blaming the Concorde for this. But this has been going on. We've been keeping track of this since about 1840.
What is a skyquake?
It's an explosion in the sky. We have no explanation for it. We've got a lot of pseudo-explanations.
Well, how do we know when we hear one or see one?
Because it's like when a jet plane passes over at, Mach 2. It's like breaking the sound barrier. It's an explosion that sometimes shatters windows, and so on. And this has been going on in Connecticut, for example. The Indians had legends about this going way back. So this has been going on for a very long time, but every time it happens, the scientists come up with a new far-fetched explanation for it.
What is the most common or daily unexplained occurrence? I mean, something that we would all say, yeah, that's that thing. We can't explain it. What?
Well, we don't necessarily have daily occurrences, but in recent years, the UFO phenomenon has been very common around the world. Right now,
we do now, honey. I'm telling you what, we got daily. We got them coming by the hour now, don't we, folks?
now it's going on in Argentina. And while a lot of people think they have an explanation for it, actually, we're just beginning to find out.
What the science is showing us is the universe appears to be alive.
The UFO phenomenon.
UFOs are pretty much, I would guess, if we asked the audience, we'd probably find over half of them said, yeah, they have reason to believe there's something going on out there, I think.
At least 10% of them have probably seen one themselves.
Has anybody here ever seen one of these things? People applaud if you've seen one. And how many of you think there may be something visiting us?
I gotta say, that sounded like a solid 10%, didn't it? You know, if you remember how Dave's audience looked, that live studio audience, and then when you think there's something visiting us, it got even louder, right? It's pretty good.
What other things fall into the category of unexplained phenomenon?
Well, we have mysterious animals that turn up all over the world.
Like what?
Here in the United States, every year or two, we have kangaroos jumping around Illinois, Connecticut, various parts of the United States. We know there are no kangaroos here. The police go out and chase them, shoot at them. They disappear. We never...
So what is your theory? Where do you think they're coming from?
The same place that the dinosaurs are coming from, because we have dinosaurs turning up every couple of years. About 10 years ago in Italy, the Italian army turned out to chase a dinosaur in the mountains of northern Italy. And they leave dinosaur footprints. And that's the end of them. They can't find where they've been, where they've gone. We've got better monsters than that. We've got our sea serpents, which we have several lakes in the United States that have sea serpents, not just Loch Ness.
Where is a serpent in this country?
Lake Champlain in New York State.
Really? What is up there?
Henry Hudson, who was the first to go up there, reported seeing, Henry Hudson and his crew saw a sea serpent in Lake Champlain, and every year somebody sees it up there. And nobody has yet organized an expedition to go up there and really look into it.
Well, let's you and me drive up there.
All right, we'll go up there next week.
We'll take the Italian army with us. We'll get those boys. And have we ever photographed a sea serpent?
Well, the one in Loch Ness has been photographed any number of times.
Yeah.
Movies have been made of it. and the movies have been examined by the RAF and other specialists, and they're obviously some kind of large animal that's living in Loch Ness.
Now, this, what do we have here? This
is a plaster cast of a Bigfoot print. Now, you've all heard of the abominable snowman in the Himalayas. We have in the United States, we have a creature that's variously called Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And he's found not just in Washington and Oregon, but he's found all over the United States, especially in the Mississippi Valley, and even in New Jersey. We have quite a lot of reports out of New Jersey, and that's where this footprint comes from.
This is from Uncle Lou and Bob. That's what it says here.
There are two Forteans in New Jersey.
Now,
this is an authentic footprint.
Did you make the cast?
No, they did. They're well-known Forteans. Bob is an airlines pilot, and Uncle Lou is a dental surgeon in New Jersey, and they're very active.
I don't know why that's funny. It just sounds funny.
Take that, Dave.
Surgeons make good casts.
How big would this guy be based on this foot?
He would be about 800 pounds, probably 8 or 9 feet tall. And that's what the witnesses are always describing, incredible as it is. And in, of course, the Himalayas, the abominable snowman.
Now that, I think, we believe in, or at least I do. To me, it seems like, sure, it's possible that something left over that survived the Ice Age or didn't survive it or something, you know, that there may be a missing link and so on and so forth. Some of this other stuff, like the red snow. What was the red snow?
Well, the usual scientific explanation for that is that the sands of the Sahara are somehow drawn into clouds and drop in Switzerland.
Now, I can believe that.
Except there are no red sands in the Sahara Desert. And I've spent part of my life on the Sahara.
What if the sand went up and was somehow oxidized and turned red? Isn't that a possibility?
Well, they've made various chemical analysis of this kind of snow. We've had black snow, too.
Yellow snow, I'm familiar with that. I think we were all waiting for that one, weren't we? Yes.
We just don't know what really causes this phenomenon. The sand explanation doesn't work.
Is there one in particular that keeps you awake at night, that just gnaws at you?
Well, there's some frightening things going on, yeah.
Like what? What are we scared of here?
The animal mutilations that have been going on around the country, especially out west in recent years. But they're also going on in Brazil and France and Australia and Switzerland, Sweden.
And these are not pranks or sick jokes?
Thousands of animals have been slaughtered now by some mysterious group. They drain all the blood from the animals. And they also perform expert operations on the animals, removing certain organs. And veterinarians who have examined these animals say they can't duplicate the operations.
That's amazing. I would also like to know why cab drivers in this city don't speak English, but we'll never... We have to pause. Mr. John Keel, accordion, ladies and gentlemen. Edwin Newman will be with us.
Okay, so interesting, right? The whole time, yeah. Are you kidding me? Steve got a titch of food poisoning, and he's, like I said in the comment there, he's a bit green. I sent him the thing, told him to chill, don't feel any pressure whatsoever. We're gonna get through this one together, okay? Because he did not sound good, and you know, send lots of light and love that way, because I've had food poisoning. It is not fun. Depending on what kind you have, it can be really awful. So, sorry about that. I didn't mean to hit that mic. So here's what I got from that. Several things, and I'm going to say my thing, and then I'm going to check out what you guys are commenting on that interview. First of all, Dave, you know, of course he's got to make fun and he's got to do his thing. And, you know, the whole time, the first time I think when I listened to it, I was picking up, Dave, you don't have any idea who you're sitting next to. This guy's really spent a lot of decades going over and over and over this. And there's a lot of serious things that he has to talk about. But of course, he had a short time on there, and, you know, get him out there. Let's make fun of the Bigfoot and, you know, and the dinosaurs and stuff like that. What I got from it the second time I listened to it, I was trying to pull out details, and it doesn't even touch on all the categories this man was really involved in over the decades. He was involved in all of this and really studying it and researching it and traveling all over and picking up this information. And with all the things that he's talking about, and we just had a few moments there, from the columns falling and cannonballs falling out of the sky and the raw meat and the frogs and the fish and everything else, and the red snow and the black snow, and we know what causes the yellow snow. It's where the Huskies go. But thank you, Frank Zappa. And they didn't even get to touch, a little bit on UFOs and things like that. But he was very, very deep in a lot of these subjects. And I think there's an awful lot to pull out here from what I'm getting. That's the big two where I'm thinking, Dave, you're making all this fun. You don't even realize, the respect this guy really should have in this subject. And then I'm watching him do his interviews and the books that are coming out, and watching all the different pictures of him kind of through his life and how he changed, and, the different pictures of publicity pictures of him. And he looked like he just had a ball. He was doing what he loved, and he was in it, and I think it was terrific at those times. You had the books, you had the interviews, you had the articles and all the different things he was writing, for different things. Of course, the research, that's fun, and the travel. But at least he had these conventions, because when you watch him at the interviews that he's done at conventions, or whether they were UFO conventions, or he was speaking on a Bigfoot, or he was talking on something, a deeper subject like quantum physics, or talking about how everything is the couple of theories that he had and I touched on earlier that I don't know a lot about, but it sounds to me like he thought a lot of things were connected too. So do I. I'm just going at it and coming in a different door to it. But again, that's one of those things that we all talk about and say, look, all these different people are going at things, taking all these different paths and different journeys and different interests and research subjects, and coming to the same conclusions. We're meeting in the middle. We keep bumping into each other. Hey, how'd you get here? So I think there's something there. I really, really do. So we will talk about on that deep stuff later on when I get a little bit more time to research it and stuff. Just being honest, I don't want to mess it up because it sounds very interesting. The other stuff that I picked up from that was, man, they've been lying to us for a long time. They've been covering stuff up. They're trying to, it's swamp gas, or it's this, or coming up with some ridiculous narrative that they want us to follow to cover up some things. He had another interview that I don't have here tonight, and he was talking about a lot about the Japanese balloons during the war that they were sending over, and that had bombs, and to follow the winds of the Gulf Coast to come up here and hit America, and they had children making these balloons. He started to tell all about this in depth. And the next thing was going to be, I guess, biological or whatever. And, he was researching into all of this stuff. But the thing that got him was how the powers that be were explaining those things and saying, we don't want that to get out because we don't want them to know how close they got, and, what was going on the our soil and everything else. And of course, that opened up a lot of things that I already do know about the war, and submarines that made it here. As a kid, I was hearing about torpedoes that were in the pier right outside my aunt's house, pretty much on the beach here in New Jersey and the coast. And ones that were found in Asbury Park, and different mines and stuff that they would find after the war. And, subs that actually got here, and people that got out, and Germans that got out and ran into Manhattan. I mean, all these things that they don't tell you about. That's what that reinforced for me. Because here's John Keel sitting there with David Letterman just rattling off a bunch of stuff throughout decades and decades and decades, going way back on many things. And they've been lying to us the whole time. That ought to tell you something. So what do you guys get out of that interview? Some of you know him and know a little bit about him, and some of you haven't heard. Ted, you just saw the movie, just like me. And I saw parts of the movie. I mean, I can't even really say that I gave it much. I didn't know anything about it going in. And I was, like I said, a busy mom. I was probably folding laundry, making dinner. I was going in and out. I wasn't picking it up. I didn't give it the proper time and attention. But I think I'm going to watch it again. I'd really like to see it again with new eyes. Maybe now I'll understand a little bit more because it looks very intriguing. So there's that. I just think that we have a lot to learn from this guy. Books, interviews, you maybe look them up on the inner tubes if you're interested, and watch a couple of these different interviews. And it's very, the way they have it, which tells you how vast his knowledge and the things that he could speak on with authority, even though he said he didn't have any. I kind of dig that about him. He said that he can, well, basically he can speak on, of course, the Men in Black, UFOs. He has a theory where he believes that, and I think in one of these interviews, at least the movie, the documentary I'm going to show here, he does touch on the fact that he feels that UFOs were not physical, but more of an energy. And he explains that a little bit. And you're starting to hear that again now, as far as even with ghosts and, sightings and manifestations of that kind, and cryptids. We're hearing that as well, whether it be the Bigfoot or, anything else, skinwalkers, dogmen, you name it, that they are also like that, which again really intrigues me on his whole theory that everything is connected. It's amazing. So, again, very cool. Now, this next one, I was going to tell you about the YouTube stuff. So when you go in there, you can see how vast his knowledge is, because some of these interviews are just about Men in Black. Some of them are just about, ufology. Some of it is just about Mothman. Some of it's about this, and this. And you can really get the broad spectrum of everything this man did in his lifetime. It's quite impressive. And to speak on it the way he did. And I think that's why it kind of ticked me off a little bit. Like, David, you don't know who you got sitting next to you, and I know he doesn't believe in any of that stuff. And I've seen him do it right before he retired, the latter part of the David Letterman show. He was kind of like that. He would just dismiss people. And it's just one of the club you ain't in, just like me. Who wants to be? I don't even like their jackets. So I'll keep my gatekeeper jacket. Thank you very much. So this next one, it gives you a little bit more on John Keel, but this one is about the Mothman. And I've always felt that the Mothman was something different. I personally don't think it was a Thunderbird. Even though some people said he had feathers, some people do describe it as having feathers. Some say other things. I did hear Keel say that Native Americans saw this because Thunderbird. I have to go ahead and put my 2 cents in on that one, because I saw what my mother considered a Thunderbird, and what elders that I spoke to on the subject felt very well could have been a Thunderbird because of some of the things that was going around at the time and happened right after. I think Mothman is a totally separate deal, because the thing that I saw was just, it could be just a big, very dark eagle. It would match that. It's not the man upward standing head kind of thing. This one, what I saw, had just very similar to what would be an eagle, or very large beak too, not like a red-tailed hawk, not something, thin and sharp, but more, more eagle. And so I'm going to have to say, I don't believe that. And as far as the whole banshee thing, where people are describing it, it's like a banshee, I think they're just trying to say that harbinger thing, harbinger of doom, something's going to happen. I'd like to know what you guys think on that, because you guys, you're out there where you're, you really understand the lore on certain things like that, where I know there's many other harbingers as well, and the banshee, like I said earlier, I think that's more for personalized for a certain family or bloodline or group, whereas I believe this thing was more focused on the town for some reason, or the people in the town, just that area at the time. But I don't believe that's the only one, because there's so many other humanoid creatures described. And just because, the description is maybe vague over here, where they're saying dark, black, kind of look like a man with wings, humanoid on the edge of a telephone pole or on the edge of a house or something like that. They all could very well be similar in nature and just a little different in appearance. And I say that because I still believe they are there. It has something to do with the energy. It has something to do with the buildup of energy. Has something to do with the loosh. It has something to do with the release of that energy, and then the payoff, the capture of that energy. Because if you start studying things like world events that build up, if you've ever noticed before an event, there'll be a lot of talk about that, a lot of buildup, a lot of, like, just say, it's not the same thing I'm talking about, but imagine a blizzard's coming and you start hearing those reports. Well, we're going to have this. It's going to make, travel's going to be impossible, and it's going to be so many feet, and you better go, eggs and milk and bread and that kind of thing. That kind of build up, like, oh my gosh, here comes the hurricane. I got to go get all these, staples. You get anxiety and you're in traffic and you got to go get this and this and this, and you're all prepared. That causes a loosh of fear. You call it you're expecting a fear event, and the fear is a slow buildup. Well, if there's a certain group that is, let's just not get too outside the box and say, taking advantage of a natural event or a date or a time or a bunch of events together, okay? If using the right kind of spell or recipe, being careful here, can actually harness the energy that is done in the name of the event, and the actual event is like a crescendo and a finale and a capturing of that energy. It can all be taken in the name of that one spell, that one cast. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? So even though it took, 3 months to get there, doesn't matter. All of the energy done in the name of that can be collected. Which is why a lot of us were worried about, or not worried about, but talking about and trying to sort this whole, why is CERN going off at the same time this is going off, at the same time this is happening, at the same time this is happening, and these things here that nobody's even talking about all at the same time. It's a collection of fear energy collected by a group to be done in the name of the crescendo finale event of all those things coordinating and coming together. And both sides use it. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's where I'm thinking at this point in time about this whole Mothman event. Again, not authority, just learning about it, really digging into it at this point. I don't know how you feel about that, but I want you to keep that in mind when you hear some of the things that people are saying here. Let's see, Vixen's got it. Many Celts don't regard the Banshee as evil or even bad, as she is just warning her human family that something is going to happen and they need to prepare. This is what I'm saying. Exactly. Well said. Thank you, Vixen. So that's what I'm saying. Whereas a couple of people in here use it, I think, I'm not going to say they're wrong. I just think that they mean a certain thing and they're using the wrong word for it. And people that know about Banshees are going to get thrown off and go, wait a minute, that doesn't fit. That's what I mean. Does that make sense? Okay. So without further ado, John Keel, a little, let's see, this is about 10 minutes, maybe a little less, maybe 8 minutes. Okay. And I hope this sound is loud enough. I tried to put it a little louder, but it really started to distort. And I didn't want to do that. So
Running around the country.
I'll run it back just a titch. Hold on. Right here. Here we go. Yeah, I didn't want it to distort. So
About a generation ago, and it gives me the shudders to think that it was a generation ago. I was running around the country, sitting up all night in cemeteries, and sitting on hilltops in remote parts of the country, looking for these funny lights in the sky that were everywhere in the 1960s. There was one hilltop in particular that overlooked the Ohio River, where at that time there was a lot of boat traffic on the Ohio River day and night. And these funny lights would come down out of the sky and circle around these boats that were transporting cargo up the Ohio River. And the boatmen would turn on their searchlights and play games with these lights. The lights would jump out of the way of the searchlights. And I was sitting on my hilltop watching them, these games going on. And I would flash this flashlight at these funny lights, and they would jump out of the way of my flashlight. And so I'd flash in Morse code at these lights, and they would do whatever I ordered them to do. And then later, I decided that instead of using Morse code, I'd make up my own code. And they knew this code, which gave me a lot of concern at the time. And I gradually figured out during this period that we could control these so-called flying saucers. They weren't saucers, they were lights. And I was sitting alone, and one of these lights came down very close to my car and passed over, there was a wooded area all around me. These hills were all wooded hills. And it passed over these woods, and it seemed to descend right into the forest right next to my car. And the next day when I woke up in my motel room there, my eyes were very sore, like they were full of sand. And this is a common effect of looking at these lights. It's called conjunctivitis. It's like looking into a bright arc light. And so the fact that my eyes were affected was proof that I had seen something there. Now, in the years 1964 to 1968, there was a worldwide epidemic of these lights. And I don't mean that it was an occasional light in the sky. They were everywhere, every damn night of the week. Time magazine did big editorials about it. The New York Times did front-page stories about it. Now, I realized that the best way to tackle this was to pick one or two spots and make them a microcosm of the whole thing, and just study everything in that spot. Learn to know the people, study every event that happened, whether it was related to these things or not. We call them UFOs, but that's really not a good name for them. They were like living lights. These lights had an intelligence of their own. I made Point Pleasant, West Virginia, sort of my headquarters in '66. My first step in arriving in a strange town, a new town, was always to go to the police station and introduce myself to the police. In those days, I carried a pile of press credentials. I was writing in newspaper columns and so on. So I would introduce myself to the police so that they knew I was just another harmless nut. In November of 1966, 4 young people in a car, they were driving past this building, and they saw what looked like a very large man, 6 or 7 feet tall, standing next to this power plant. And for some reason, he scared the death out of it. They were all scared to death. So the boy who was driving hit the accelerator, and they drove out of there at a high speed. And looking back, this thing rose up in the air and followed their car. And they were going over 60 miles an hour on these dirt roads. And this thing was flying right along with them. So they drove straight to the police station. Now, you have to realize in small towns, teenagers do not go to the police station voluntarily. And the police were so convinced by their behavior that they held a press conference the next day. And reporters from the local newspapers, from Charlotte and other cities around there, came to hear this very bizarre story of this flying man. At that time, Batman was very popular on television. So the newspapers labeled this creature Mothman. And that was the beginning of the Mothman caper, I guess you'd call it. In the next year, there were over 100 reports of this Mothman. Some of the people who reported seeing this thing were not only adults, they were responsible adults like bankers and local officials, the lady who was sort of the head of the Chamber of Commerce. In the Christmas season of 1967, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, there was a bridge called the Silver Bridge that crossed the Ohio River. And on December 15th, 1967, that bridge collapsed, and it was loaded down with cars, people who had been Christmas shopping, and that sort of put a damper on all my investigations. Because I knew some of the people who had gone down with the bridge, and some of these people had been Mothman witnesses. And so I did just one magazine article on the whole subject, and it was a short article. It was about 2,000 words. I gave one talk on the radio about it, on Long John Neville's show, and that was the extent of my involvement. Now today, when you pick up any encyclopedia of the strange or anything, it always says that John Keel is the center of the Mothman thing.
Just stopping it real quick, just to throw it out there. How many of you, when he said Long John Neville, did your ears perk up? Because mine did, and I hadn't thought of that name in such a long time. He was like similar to an Art Bell, of his time, but very cool. And that's all he did. He did one talk, and before you know it, people like us picked up on it and got the word out there, and legend is born. And he had been doing it for decades. You never know when you're going to hit. You just got to stay with whatever you love, because and keep being honest and truthful about it. I believe this guy. I don't think he was even in it I think he's in it for the same reasons we are. And it just intrigued him. And he tried to, I honestly believe that he tried to put all this stuff forward in the best truth he could, and it wasn't an easy journey, because especially through the times he came up through.
And one of the newspapers in West Virginia did a long editorial against me, saying that I was exploiting the situation and making a big profit from it. Of course, little do they know, I made no profit at all from it.
I don't know why that thing is absolutely adorable. Well, there you go, guys. So, interesting man, right? And, maybe it's fate that I had to do things this way, because it was, I don't know how to describe this. See if you guys have ever had this experience. Again, throughout decades of my life, I've read his works. I remember reading Fate magazine back when I'm like 9, 10. Just like Steve and I talk about all the time. It's a little bitty magazine, like the Reader's Digest for the paranormal, supernatural, weird and whatnot people. And read so many articles he wrote. And, of course, you're going to really pay attention to stuff you're really interested in. You just like read over the stuff that just intrigues you, Ripley's Believe It or Not or whatever. But if I had, say, in my 20s or 30s, really dug into, this, I don't think I would understand the things he was saying like I do now. Just because of natural time and paying attention and researching and picking up this and picking that up and seeing how this connects into this and this connects into that. But I also think it has a lot to do with consciousness and what you're supposed to understand at the time. I think there's a certain reasoning behind it because, like Glenn said earlier, he and many other people were way ahead of their time. I also believe that people like Harry Price in 1938, way ahead of his time. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, way ahead of his time. He just got in with the wrong, the wrong story became famous. He bet on the wrong horse. It's not that there was all bad horses in the race. Or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle just put all his money on the wrong horse, I believe. In that one instance with the fairies, where the little girls and the cutouts of the coloring book and all. If you know about that story, I've done an episode on it. Steve and I did, and it's here somewhere on the channel. So things like that. But people way ahead of their time and then got bad press, or got, one person or one journalist or one newspaper article, magazine article said something, and that wipes out decades of your career, like happened to Sylvia Browne and 10,000 other people we can mention. But I do believe it has something to do with consciousness and what you're ready to understand and see, because there's no way I could start doing all that connection. It was really something, because I'm getting all these like little, I don't say downloads, but I could actually see where, well, wow, that connects into what such and such said about this. And over here with this, I was getting that all afternoon. And that's why I'm looking at, there was a comment I think Lulu made about something about, he was there to like warn people that something was going to happen. And I've heard a lot of people describe it that way. That's why I was kind of talking so much about the Banshee thing, about the harbinger of doom. I think if you had asked me 10, 20 years ago and said that, I would have said, yeah, probably, because, what I knew about the case and the amount I knew was minuscule. Okay, it still is. I would have said possibly, maybe that's why he was showing up to people, and, he was, I don't know. Now I would have to say that I am comfortably sitting in the chair of, I think it was way more sinister than that. Way more sinister. Because of what I explained before. And if you really start to back up and look at the whole thing, you can see a lot of other events that happen that way, because it really is, if the timing is right, if the ritual is right, if everything is aligned correctly, that can be considered a sacrifice for the bad side. And it's not just those that are here on this earth, if that makes any sense. I don't necessarily mean other planets. I mean other dimensions, other planes, other vibrations. So think of it that way, and just try not to focus too much on that, and consider the fact that this is a buildup, and the things that were happening to the people that not only witnessed this Mothman, but the stuff that was happening around the event and the events that happened to each individual witness. Now, you'll hear that John Keel said some of the people that went off on that bridge, which was a terrible tragedy and horrible, 1967, right around Christmas, the water was, I definitely got something in my eye. Water is cold. I mean, and that made me think of when I was in a blizzard back in, I think it was 80, 81. And I happened to be here in Jersey, and it was terrible, terrible blizzard. And that's when the plane went down right out of Washington, D.C. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it kind of clipped over the cars on the bridge and went into the water, and it was just so bad. Oh, so bad. Right into the Potomac, and it was ice, and it was cold, and it was just horrific. And we sat and watched all that live, and people coming out of their cars, total strangers, diving into that ice water to save people. And it was just tragic. It was just like most tragedies. You've got the tragedies, and you got the heroics, and the, that both come out in an event like that. Very the same here. So look at it that way. I'm going to pull up this documentary. We're going to watch it, and I'm going to stop it. Like every 10 minutes, we'll talk about it. But I think if you know the story and you see this documentary and you look at it with that possibility of that vantage point in your mind when you're watching it, and tell me what you think on that level, because I think there's a lot of events that we can look back on and learn from that, so we can kind of see the signs and work against it as light workers, because I'm telling you, it's the only thing that works. Believe me, I've seen groups of remote viewers actually change directions of storms with energy. There's so much to energy that is just beyond, the imagination, and the reality is quite amazing. So that's why I believe this whole thing was more sinister. You tell me what you think. Here we go. And for the first 2 minutes, I'm going to jump up and get some hot water, but I'm here. I need some for the tea. I need to get a proper cuppa. And here we go.
We couldn't believe what we really saw.
What if someone or something could warn you about the future?
Half man, half monster, I guess you'd call it.
Never seen anything like it. I hope I never do again, It was just unbelievable.
But the very sight of this messenger filled you with terror.
Those eyes. That's all she'd ever say was those eyes.
What if it showed you a disaster was about to occur, but no one would believe you?
People were screaming. You could hear them hollering for help.
It's already happened. Not just here, but all over the world. And it's happening right now. Wherever this messenger appears, tragedy follows. What went on in Point Pleasant? What did they witness? Where will it go next?
What if? And if's a big question.
It's a story most of us have never heard. Now they're making a movie about it, called The Mothman Prophecies. But this is no Hollywood fantasy. The events and the people are real. You're about to hear eyewitness accounts from the past and profound lessons for the future. Throughout history, stories have circulated of enormous flying creatures, dark-winged beings that prophesize death and destruction, but generate such fear that eyewitnesses can't face or understand their meaning. Author Lauren Coleman has been researching these creatures for over 30 years.
Mothman really fits right in with the long history that we have of seeing winged creatures, flying humanoids, big birds. They've had many different monstrous names down through history, and they really start from the times of the ancient Babylonians up until, a month ago.
Writer John Keel was in Point Pleasant, West Virginia when the events there took place. His book, The Mothman Prophecies, is the definitive account of those sightings.
These things have always been here. The Indians in America here called it the Thunderbird, a huge bird. In the Orient, they called it the Garuda.
You can go all the way back to 1880 when a strange flying man was seen over Coney Island, New York. The Houston Batman of the 1950s. Rio Grande, 1976 is one case. Right now, you've got a wave of Thunderbird sightings in Pennsylvania. And so Mothman, if you look at it in context, is not that unusual, but what makes Mothman so interesting and really exciting is that you have over 100 witnesses saying they saw it in one concentrated area in 13-month periods.
It started with an incredible story that John Keel ran across in a small-town newspaper.
I was driving around the south where they had a lot of UFO sightings, and Mothman thing broke. It came over the wires. 4 young couples had seen something in Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
It was November 15th, 1966. Late in the evening, 2 young couples drove to a remote hangout on the outskirts of town.
2 couples joyriding around the TNT area, which is a munitions dump from World War II. But all of a sudden, they see these giant red eyes. Very apparent that they aren't supposed to be there. And all of a sudden they see a form to it. The form takes shape. They see there's huge wings to this form.
We couldn't believe what we really saw. And this thing was standing there, but it had a body just like a man. You could see muscles in its legs. We sit there for a minute and looked at each other, and then we took off.
And they get scared and they want to get out of there. And all of a sudden they're taking off. They're going anywhere from 100, 120 miles an hour. And they notice that this creature is following them. And they can see it through the back window. A shadow, is going across the car once in a while. And they can't get away from it.
We didn't really talk about it or anything. But we saw it all the way down the road into town. It followed us.
They couldn't get away from it until they, almost got to the edge of Point Pleasant.
The creature vanished as they entered town, and the couples headed straight for the sheriff's office. He went out that night to investigate their story, but found no sign of the creature. When Linda finally got home, family friend Doris DeWeese was there to meet her.
When they got home, she got in the house, she collapsed. Of course, they had to call a doctor and have him come out, give her something. I mean, she was hysterical. That's all there was to it.
The following day, the sheriff held a press conference at the county courthouse to discuss the sightings. The local press jumped on the story and dubbed the mysterious flying creature the Mothman, after a character from the Batman television show. Doris remembers vividly how Linda described it.
The head looked like a man, and it had fiery red eyes, half man, half monster, or I guess you'd call it.
Something unnatural was stalking the hills of West Virginia, and John Keel decided to go and see it for himself. But this was only the beginning. Others would encounter it, and tragedy would soon follow in its wake.
All I could see were these two red eyes. I kept looking at it. I couldn't stop. And then I guess it just took off.
When writer John Keel arrived in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, he could tell something had the community on edge.
Yeah, you could feel that something was happening there. And so I lingered there, and I started getting into all of this stuff. I found many strange things going on in the homes, and I found that many people had seen things but never reported it to anybody.
Past few months, people have been coming up to me and reporting that they've been seeing strange things. And I'm not talking about the town speed freak. I'm talking about good, honest, church-going people. Now, I've known these folks my entire life, and they seem downright embarrassed to be bringing it up.
Bringing what up?
It's hard to explain.
The capital of Mason County, Point Pleasant is a tight-knit community of 5,000, where everyone knows their neighbors, where life moves at the simple and welcoming pace found in the rural South.
Everybody thinks of hillbillies when they think of West Virginia. They were not hillbillies, and they were not the kind of people that would make these things up.
Since the 18th century, farmers have made a good living from this fertile land along the banks of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers. Researcher Dan Drazen visited Point Pleasant in 1966 to investigate the strange sightings.
People seem like ordinary people, very friendly, matter-of-fact folks. What you see is what you get. I felt very welcome in the town.
Just north of town is a densely overgrown wildlife preserve, much of it almost inaccessible. But hidden beneath the thick brush is evidence of a grim history. Part of the area had been used during World War II as a place to covertly manufacture and store munitions. Remnants of a factory still stand, along with almost 100 large concrete domes that were built into the ground to house the high explosives. Because of its past, locals dubbed it the TNT area. That's where Marcella Bennett was headed on the night of November 16, 1966. She and her brother were bringing her 3-year-old daughter to visit relatives who lived on the outskirts of the TNT area. As they pulled up near the house, they spotted some strange lights in the sky that hovered above the trees. Marcella's brother was mesmerized.
I told him I didn't want to see any lights, and he says, "No, stop." He said, "You got to look at this. This isn't a plane." And I said, "Oh, sure, you know." And I just kept on walking towards the car.
She was carrying her daughter when suddenly a figure stirred nearby.
I had just approached the car, and out of the corner of my eyes, I saw this creature, which was over 6 foot tall with feathers. It just looked like a giant bird, but yet a man. And it was standing with its shoulders and then its neck down in like this. I just couldn't imagine what I was seeing and panicked. And when I tried to run, I couldn't run.
In a state of shock, Marcella fell to the ground, directly on top of her little girl.
I couldn't get up to get off of her, and I thought, well, you know, she's dead. You know, I'm killing her, but I couldn't move. You know, it was just, I was in a trance.
Finally pulling herself together, she picked up her child and ran towards the house.
When I finally did get up to my feet and get my feet working, I realized that my knees were all torn up and my hands and my face had been buried in the sand. I couldn't see. And I thought I heard the creature fly off with these real loud flopping wings, you know, made a real loud sound.
The family locked themselves inside the house, but hysteria gripped them as the creature reappeared, shuffling onto the porch and peering into the windows.
Now, I wanted to stop it there just for a minute to let you guys know something. Now, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I want you to think about it. When I watched this documentary, I started recalling all of the different witness statements that I heard other people do, say on unsolved mysteries through the years, or sightings, or a possible documentary, or something along the way. Now, you got to imagine through the years, this was 67, the year that this all happened. I, again, thought it was just a week or two, you know, within days of this collapse of this bridge. It wasn't. It was almost it was over a year. And I believe they say that in this. I know Keel does. Because he had gone, he had stayed. Did you hear him when he said, I lingered there? You know, and I'm kind of laughing, you know, because I know multiple stories that Steve has told, and many of my other buddies and stuff that, you know, that are into this. And it's so neat that, you know, a lot of times you can do that. You can go and chase a story, or you can go and check out something after the fact, or, you know, but to be there when something's happened. I know Steve's told me different stories about towns he had gone to, and, you know, when he was able to, you know, travel and do all those things, you know, and trying to write about, you know, stuff. It's just wonderful that he got to do that. But he was there for a while and left. And then he was going to go back after the fact, you know, and you heard him in that interview talking about a little bit about that, how it really hit him hard, because he had interviewed and gotten to know some of these people that went over that bridge. That's how long he was there. That's how long this went on. That's one thing, the length of time. 2, the telepathic power of, I don't recall anybody ever saying that they got a thought from it, like you would from, say, you know, maybe a Bigfoot or another cryptid, or many different ghosts and things like that, aliens, angels, spirits. Okay, everything's telepathic. I don't remember anybody ever saying that they got words like don't run or don't be afraid or things like that, because you even had that with the Ingrid Cole stuff. And that's a whole nother one I want to get into down the line, and a lot of these travelers and things. But anyway, I digress. But I do believe there was some kind of supernatural effect of the woman who was talking about, I'm looking out the window, I'm watching it, I could not look away. I don't think she said that as hyperbole or you know, word dressing or anything along those lines. I think she couldn't look away physically, because if you add hers up with all the others, and this woman here talking about she's a mother carrying her child to the car, she sees this happens, she tries to move, she can't. She literally falls into the ground. She's on top of her kid. She's thinking, I can't move. I'm going to kill this child. I'm dead. We're all dead. You know, the fear that's going through her. I don't think it's just fear is paralyzing these people. I think it's something else. I think it's a force. I think it's coming off of this thing. Now, I can understand the different descriptions as well of, I think Scott mentioned, you know, the red eyes more toward the chest, not really a distinct head. There are other witness statements that describe the distinct head, had a man's head, is another, that's a direct quote, you're not hearing anything about the neck like you think, like you hear with Bigfoot. Like a distinct thing about Bigfoot is it really doesn't have a neck. It's almost like there's just a head into the shoulders, you know, which I was wondering if it was something like that was going on. But there are multiple descriptions of a head. And I think one of them is the description of, oh gosh, if I can find that documentary, I'll pull it up. But I watched it about a year ago. And I think it was an unsolved mystery, but it was done in that kind of feel. So this woman, she had reached a certain age, and before she passed, she said that she never talked about it before, really came out and talked about it, especially on camera. And she wanted to do it because she had reached a point in her life where she just didn't give a shit anymore and didn't care what other people said. And, you know, she had kept quiet about it for so long. She was the one that was in the car, in the first car. And she's in that little story where you heard about the kids going out to the TNT area. They called it TNT because of the explosives that they built there in the war. Just another little, you know, up yours from the government. It decided that they were going to go to West Virginia in that beautiful area with these beautiful people up there trying to hack it out of the wilderness and these coal mines and God knows what else, just going about their lives being decent people. And they go and put this catastrophe near them and near the water supply and everything else. And then when they're done, of course, they just leave it to leak all into the ground and the nature preserve. And they put it here, let's put a nature preserve there. That'll cover it up. Son of a gun. You know, that's the stuff that kills me. Well, there's a lot, but that's definitely one of them. But anyway, that's what this is. It's an abandoned place. It's full of toxic nonsense. And this is where these kids eventually go, I guess, as Lover's Point or whatever. And welcome in, Jack, if you didn't see me put it up there. So I don't know if this is the... Oh, I just did that. Didn't fit. So it reminds me of Joey and Friends. Never mind. So I don't know if it's the same couple, but here's the girl's story. She says they're there, and it wasn't unusual for multiple kids in cars and their hot rods. You know, 67, right? And hanging out, and you know, one couple in one car, one couple in the next, and maybe another car would have two couples, one in the back, you know, whatever. And they're all just hanging out. And they're standing around listening to music, leaning on their car, you know. And all of a sudden, this woman that's telling the story says that she's talking and she's looking at her girlfriend sitting next to her girlfriend's boyfriend, leaning on their car. And she's kind of standing off to the side of her boyfriend's car, and he's leaning on the back end of his Mustang, whatever, when cars were cars. And she said that she just felt like real funny. She started to get a feeling in the side back of her neck because she's turning and talking to everybody. She felt like something was here. And she's, you know, she's looking and she's thinking about, you know, bear, you know, whatever in the woods, something in the woods. And she said a couple other things where it really described how that feeling intensified slowly with her thoughts. And she's like, you know, starting to get that feeling of her hair standing up, you know, on her arms and the back of her neck. And she looks and she sees not far from her two red eyes staring at her from the darkness. And she had a description, and I think it was like where they were really used to pulling the cars in, so she kind of knew the trees and the area around, and whatever building it was, they were familiar with it, and she knew how big this one tree was, and she said that what hit her and kind of broke her freeze, and I think that's how she described it. She was frozen. She couldn't move. The last thing she remembered really feeling was the hair going up on her neck, and she's like trying to like move away from the wood line, and she can't move. So she looked up, and the eyes where this shape was kind of appearing as her eyes adjusted to it were so high up that the actual thought of if he's standing next to that tree, I know how tall that tree is. This thing's got to be, 8, 9, 10 feet tall, just huge. And that was enough to kind of shake her a little bit. And she was able to turn and jump in the car and say, let's go. We got to go. There's something in the woods, something in the woods, something's looking at us. She said she wasn't sure what they did as far as looking at the eyes or what they saw. She jumped in the car. They take off. And he was describing that this thing flew after the car. They're doing 60 miles an hour. I don't think it was this couple. I think this was another one, because she said that when she looked, her boyfriend jumped in the car. She slammed the door. She was trying to turn the key to make it go. Like that feeling back in the day. He's not even in the car yet. He gets in. She's go, 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 go. And they take off. And because of the way they were situated, they pulled in front of the other car and took off. And the other car followed them. This thing shot out of the woods. She said she was there. She looked over here, tried to turn the key, turned back and looked, and it was right there in the window, just like these eyes are here. Right there. She said it moved so fast. And that's when she slapped her boyfriend and said, go. He hit the gas. They were on gravel, she said. So the tires were spinning. She could hear the gravel, but she could hear it running along with. He got up faster speed, and this thing kept speed right next to it. And the whole time, she said, and I'll never forget the way she said this, wasn't even looking where it was running. It's looking at her. Eye to eye, just on the other side of the glass. And she's just repeating over and over, go faster, go faster, go faster, and she's doing that kind of thing. And they're just going, going, going. She said at one point she looked and it wasn't there anymore, but it followed him for a very long time. She said she's never told the story before, and this was the first time on camera. And it was definitely after, let's say, probably about 10 years before this one was done. So I'm kind of going by that. When I heard her tell that story, it was incredible. And she was one of the ones that was really messed up. But I don't believe she stayed there where these other people stayed in town. That's why I think it's two different stories. I think it followed more than one set of kids out of those woods, if that makes any sense. There's some kind of supernatural control, energy manipulation, and I sincerely believe that this thing is there. And it's causing, not to warn, I'm going to say it that way, but to turn up fear for the energy. There's something else going on here. Tell me what you think. Here's the next part.
The police were summoned, but it had vanished by the time they arrived.
It was just very frightening. One of the worst frightening experience I've ever had, in my life. And hope it's the last. It still bothers me to even talk about the creature,
Marcella relived the incident for months and was so distraught that she sought medical attention to deal with her anxieties. To this day, she is tormented by frightening dreams and visions.
I could be driving along and all of a sudden I'd feel like there was something in the back seat and I would just hit my brake, I'd just slam on the brake and just turn real fast and look at my back seat. The presence of him was still around. And that was an eerie feeling.
For those folks in West Virginia, it's a trauma. It's a trauma as big as anything they'd ever experienced, and they're going to be frightened for their whole life.
John Keel's stay in Point Pleasant turned from days to weeks as more and more eyewitnesses came forward.
Most of them were just bewildered. There were a few who were very afraid. afraid to go out of their house at night. It did cast a shadow over the whole valley.
Well, what did you see?
I don't know. I was looking at it in the sky, and then all of a sudden it just, just sort of sank right into the trees, and it kind of moved around a little, and then it looked like, it's time to go away.
And I just kind of froze. It was terrifying. That's the last we've seen of him. That was enough.
There's very little humor in these stories. These are people who were genuinely terrified or genuinely puzzled.
John Keel became convinced that something very serious and very real was going on. But no one knew what it was, why it was there, or what it meant. More sightings would be reported, and not just of the creature. The situation was about to become even more terrifying.
Mr. Clinton, last night I woke up with the worst headache I've ever had in my life, and I went into the bathroom to get some aspirin, and I happened to look in the mirror, and I swear to God, I see something I can't describe, but it sure as hell is not my reflection.
Through the winter of 1960.
So many of those stories. I'll stop it real brief. What he just said, I don't want to say hallucinations, but it's very much, okay, think Poltergeist, the movie. When one of the college students that were paranormal investigators, and he was in the kitchen, and he was eating the steak, and he looks down, he's cooking the steak, and he goes and grabs the fire pan, and he looks back at the steak, and it's covered in maggots that aren't really there. He then goes, I believe, to wash his hands or something in the bathroom, and he looks in the mirror, and his face starts peeling, and he's peeling it, his face and all this, and he's freaking out, and it goes away. Slime running down the walls in Amityville. It's not really there after, sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. Fire bursting, these kind of things. If a poltergeist, if a ghost, if a human entity, an earthbound spirit, which I think is one that probably definitely isn't connected into all the things it can do and the energy that would definitely get on the other side. It's just angry energy being focused in different places, or anxiety, fear, those things, strong energies. But they're all describing different things like this. Some weren't even witnesses. Some are just there in the town. They're having dreams. They're seeing things in the mirror when they look at them. They're seeing this thing sitting in a tree, and they're doing dishes in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, like that one lady, she notices it sitting in the tree, and she felt it looking at her. She felt the whole thing. There's some energy there. There's some vibe. And there's also some ability, some really strong supernatural ability. So put that in the bag. Okay. I think it needs to be counted. What do you guys think? Oh, yum. That's a recipe. Is that lasagna, Jack? That sounds good. That sounds good. Do you put egg in your regatta? You got to put egg, and you got to put fresh Parmesan in your regatta. It's all about the regatta. It's all about the regatta. Don't get me started. Okay. Real cheese, whole milk. Say. Okay. Extra fat and bacon. Get some bacon in there. Okay. Yeah, the predator style this is what I'm saying. I think this has something to do with creating the energy of fear, which is louche. The more fear, the better for them. And some kind of energy collection. And probably, I hate to, use the S word, but, a lot of this goes on. Think about the green-eyed, Chappaquiddick. And that's what it should be called. What was that thing? You know what I'm talking about. Steve talks about that one all the time. That was seen not just during the Civil War battle. Chickamauga. Right? It's seen over the wounded, basically, like one of those things from the Harry Potter movie that's just, like a soul collector. Right? Cabin 22. I'm telling you. I'm thinking. I'm leaning that way.
Sightings of the creature known as the Mothman continued to be reported around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Not only were eyewitnesses terrified and emotionally disturbed by their encounters, but some were even physically affected, exhibiting strange burns on their skin and inflamed, swollen eyes.
I woke up and nearly both my eyes were swelled up.
Eyes, the first thing I seen was swollen and red, and water was coming out of them.
Keith Aker was 17-year-old Connie Carpenter's boyfriend at the time and soon-to-be husband. Connie herself is still even today too frightened to come forward and tell her story, so Keith agreed to set the record straight.
I'd like people just to understand that I'm here to make sure that they don't think that she's a kook, because she's not. And what she has said she's seen, she has actually seen.
Still in high school, Connie was driving home when she saw something unusual on the side of the road.
I don't know what caught her attention, whether it was a shadow or what, but she said she looked and slowed down, and here it was. Wings come out and it went straight up. And she said it hit it right for me. She said all I could see was the red eyes. I went to the house that night, and her mom met me at the door and said she's in bed. She didn't want to come out of her bedroom. Those eyes. That's all she'd ever say was those eyes.
As writer John Keel puzzled over the exact nature and meaning of the creature's sightings, he began to connect them with the dozens of local UFO reports he'd heard.
There was a man here from New York trying to find out as much as he could about the flying saucers.
Doris DeWeese was one of the people John tracked down and interviewed.
We lived on Madison Avenue over in Point Pleasant, and every night there'd be flying saucers going over. I was scared to death because, I mean, you know, we had no idea what they were going to do or what their intentions was. We figured they were from outer space or something.
That's where I first saw it at. Seen the lights rotating. It looked like it was about 4 feet high, maybe 6 or 8 foot wide. And the lights were multicolored, red and white, yellow, green. And it was just circulating like it wasn't making any noise. And it disappeared as quick as it appeared in the first place.
It's a long, cigar-shaped type vehicle that looked so close that you could look like you could just jump up and touch it. It had lights all on the side. It was completely silent, didn't make any noise whatsoever. We were just in awe. We just stood transfixed. We just couldn't believe that we were seeing what we were seeing.
UFO reports poured in, and the local media picked up on the frenzy.
This is desolate Dry Ridge Mountain, where last night a strange and eerie thing happened.
It was this big orange glowing light, you know. So we stopped the car and the thing came over top of the car. We got all kinds of static on the radio and the car quit.
John Keel himself witnessed these.
Got all staticky on the radio, and the car quit. A little more.
Strange lights in the sky.
I began to see them myself. It was beyond imagination. They were extremely bright lights, which could hover. If you flashed a flashlight at them, they'd respond, they'd flash back. I saw a lot of these lights. In fact, I saw so many of them, I lost count.
John Keel was at a loss to explain what was happening to the town, whether it was all connected, and why it was happening here, of all places.
To this day, we can't really tell you what those lights are.
Now, improvised search parties are combing Dry Ridge Mountain, attempting to find it. Just what it is, no one is sure.
Okay, so there's a little more left. What you think about all the things that you heard about?
The community was on edge.
About the telepathic, the I can't say it. I want to say hallucinogens, but that's not it. Hallucinations. I think it's a little more than that. I think they're materializing. They're making you see these things. So that's different than hallucinid. I can't say it. That's different than you seeing it on your own because you have a chemical imbalance or a mental health issue or something like that, or schizophrenia. They're putting the picture there. They're making you see it because it's more than that. If you stick your hands in the fire, people say it burns at first and then it just disappears. I actually had this happen more than once. And I can tell you from that experience, just like Scott's telling you in here, and I read that, Scott, I think it's awesome. And also the creatures looking at, from a different dimension and things like that. And you guys know, I believe that at least some Bigfoots, Sabes, are interdimensional. My grandmother always told me half in, half out, half in the spirit world, half out, at will. And I also believe that portals and things like that, and being able to manipulate and understand energy and do things like this, so many creatures can do this. People can do it, so think about that. There's more to this thing than meets the eye at first, and there's more coming. The real fear that people had, and I don't think it's just fear of being ridiculed or whatever. In the movie, through little clips, and I watched a couple of things and a couple of trailers, and I talked to somebody about it too. That was one of the things I wasn't getting when I was, walking in and out. When I saw it, I really didn't give it the chance it needed. Like I said, I probably wouldn't have understood it at that time anyway. But when the cop character, the lady cop, and she's talking about, these are people that, upstanding people, they seem embarrassed to talk about it. It's hard for them to talk about it. These are upstanding people that don't make up things. They're not the local, addict or drunk, down at the pub. That's kind of the stuff that you hear with, sightings of anything, a UFO or Bigfoot or whatever. It's that stigma. But there seems to be even more so here. There is a inherent fear about it. And maybe that's because of the things that happen after and are still happening today. So here comes that part.
The community was on edge, afraid of the night and what it might bring.
They had the National Guard out looking for it. The state police was patrolling the area where it was seen. People would go out at night with lights and stuff. It was almost like a search for Frankenstein. Well, I wasn't with them. I was too scared to go at night.
But I know one thing, I lock my doors at night. I mean, before, we never locked doors. We always left them unlocked, but after that, we started locking doors.
But other mysterious forces were at work in the town. Someone didn't want these stories to be told and threatened those who spoke. Who were these men in black? And why did they want to cover up the truth? Around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reports of creature sightings, UFOs, and strange phenomena continued for months.
I went back several times, I wasn't there just once. I'd get back to New York, be exhausted, and the phone would ring, and somebody that I had met down there would be calling me and telling me about something new that had happened. I realized after a while that this was folklore in the making.
Alexander. Adding to the town's hysteria was the presence of mysterious visitors, strange men dressed in black, who didn't want the truth to be told.
And he said, "We don't want to hear any more about this," and he left. So after he had said what he did, we didn't say any more about it.
A local newspaper columnist named Mary Heyer was helping John Keel with his investigations. She died soon after these events, before she could discover what was really going on.
Mary was the kind that would investigate anything that had a story to it. And this here was a story that she had to find the truth out about. And I believe she would have hunted and hunted and hunted for years until she found it. She's like Mr. Keel. He hunts for the truth, and she was too.
Mary was quite frightened. She was frightened for her life. She said these men had visited her quite a bit, and she said these men in black had olive complexion, and she noted one thing that I always thought was very strange. She said they didn't blink their eyes, and they would ask her questions about the Mothman.
Well, I've been around a lot of reporters in my life, and there are some I wouldn't play cards with, let alone accept their stories. Mary was very trustworthy.
She truly felt like they were a threat to her. And she felt like maybe it was because of the reporting that she was doing. And she wasn't sure whether they intended to make her stop but she was into this now and she wasn't going to give it up.
It's just something it's eerie. I don't know why they was coming around that time, but they'd been in different homes, different places, asking questions.
But Keith Aker never expected anything to happen to him or his wife, Connie.
I'd come home, and she was scared. She wouldn't come out of the apartment. She wouldn't even answer the door, and I'm glad I had a key, because that's the only way I got in.
Keith found Connie cowering in the bedroom, and he slowly coaxed her into talking to him.
She went down that morning to get in the car, and some guy pulled up and asked her for directions. So she goes over, and he grabs her and tries to jerk her in the car. And she said he was dressed in black. I said, now this is too weird, but I know what took place. Because the blouse that she had was ripped, and she would not rip her clothes herself.
Not long after, a threatening note was left on Connie's front porch.
She more or less crawled into a shell. She didn't want to be by herself. She didn't want to go anywhere by herself.
Why wouldn't someone want you to talk about the Mothman? That's a good question. I really don't know. This whole business about men in black and silencing witnesses, you know, you have theorists who say it's the CIA.
But to this day, the government has denied any involvement in Point Pleasant.
Well, I called the Air Force in Columbus, Ohio, and they just sort of poo-pooed it, turned it off. And it's always been a puzzle.
Local residents began to ask why this would happen to Point Pleasant. And while some still dismissed the strange phenomena as the product of wild imaginations, sightings continued to be reported. Everett Wedge was one of the community's most upstanding and respected citizens. He was one of 5 pilots who were standing on a local airstrip when they saw what they described as an enormous dark-colored bird flying above them.
And it was big enough that it could, I'd say it could pick me or you up and probably carry us away. That's how big it was. I've been around lots of my time, and I never ever saw a bird that big, but I did see it. And like I say, might not have quite 20 eyes now, but I did then.
At 7:15 a.m. on November 25th, a shoe salesman named Tom Urey was driving just north of the TNT area.
I noticed something out of the corner of my eye from the riverbank over here, and it came up over the trees, and when I first saw it, it looked like a helicopter coming up. And then when it came up over the trees, I could see it was a bird, a huge bird. Estimating the wingspan, I would say 10 to 12 feet, give or take on either end, up to 15. I'd never seen anything that large before in my life. I was scared, but I wasn't terrified. It was just a strange feeling. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I hope I never do again, you know. It was just unbelievable.
And a few months later, the local Red Cross bloodmobile was chased by the creature.
And this thing hovered over the bloodmobile. First they sensed it, and then they looked out the windows and looked up, and whatever it was a huge thing. And they thought that some like claw-like things were descending and going to grab the bloodmobile. And he drove out of there. Then there were a number of other cases that tied it in with blood. What cinched it for me was in talking to female witnesses, I would ask them about their menstrual period. And a lot of these women who claimed to have been chased
This is
and
huge.
automobiles were having their menstrual period at the time. And that seemed to me to be a major clue of some sort.
Reports of missing dogs and
You remember Al telling you about that? Brian Bowden and so many others been on this channel. They won't take somebody out hunting, look for Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever they're doing out there. It's part of it. The Bloodmobile is absolutely creepy. Think about it. I don't think it was just because if it was the one they were showing here, a white Bloodmobile, going around and collecting. That's something. Right, Aunt Enda? I'm telling you, think about it. Put it in your bag. Put it in your bag.
Mutilated cattle only serve to heighten fears.
Usually the animal has been drained of blood, but there's another clue to these animal mutilations is that very often the anus of the cow is removed, and we know that radioactivity settles in the anus, and whoever's doing it is checking the radioactivity influencing these animals.
Obviously, something was happening here, something unexplainable and terrible. But no one at the time had the foresight to understand exactly how horrific it would eventually turn out to be. Dozens of innocent people would die before the truth was known. Strange phenomena continued in Point Pleasant for over a year. By December 1967, over 100 sightings of the creature had been reported. And people weren't just seeing it, they were dreaming about it. Eyewitnesses complained of nightmares and dark premonitions.
If you look at some of these winged wonders, these creatures, like Mothman, like the Cornwall Owlman, like the Thunderbirds, there's this interwoven kind of tradition that they're banshees, that they really are the prophets of doom in many ways.
There are the old legends, if a bird looks in your window, you're in trouble, big trouble.
You read in some of the traditions of the Cherokee where there's actually warriors and braves guarding the women when there was a Thunderbird time. In Cornwall and some of the Owlman reports, if somebody was going to get in an auto crash or a kid was going to die.
I was getting anonymous phone calls and could never figure that out. I was getting phone calls warning me about this and that.
Hello, John Klein. Who is this? My name is Ingrid Cole.
Higher, the reporter friend of John Keel, had these dreams, incredible dreams in which she saw Christmas packages in the water, but she had this feeling there was going to be a major disaster.
There's a lot more going on here, folks.
But no one expected the tragedy
that
followed. Almost 13 months to the day of the first sighting of the creature, disaster struck.
I was planning to go back down to West Virginia in December of that year, and I had repeated phone calls warning me, don't go to West Virginia, because they knew that I would be using the bridge, whoever they were.
Main Street in Point
looks to me like the sound's off
suspension bridge called
on this.
Sorry. Bridge. Spanning the Ohio River, locals would cross it on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. At 5:05 p.m. on December 15th, 1967, the bridge was full of cars, many of them Christmas shoppers, when suddenly it began to shake. Charlene Wood was on the bridge at that very moment.
When I got to the traffic light here in Point Pleasant, I got the red light. When it changed, I started going up onto the bridge.
I agree.
And just about that time, the bridge started shaking.
What is the first thing that happened, Mrs. Fowler, that made you know something was wrong?
I agree.
The bridge was swaying, and we heard a loud noise.
And at that point, I thought someone had hit the bridge underneath one of the boats or barges. And I threw my car into reverse, and as I threw it on reverse, the bridge incline came up this way, and as I backed off, when my car stopped on me, my tires was right on the ledge where it broke off. And as I got down, I could see the bridge was falling, and people were hollering and all.
How far were you from absolute safety? I'd say over a car length. If I'd have been another car length, I'd have made it.
It came down like you'd stack dominoes and give them a push, you know how they'll fold. That's the way it looked like it was folding toward me.
Look familiar, guys?
To see if there's anything we could do, and we could see there's one big tractor and trailer must have been way back, and you could see it floating, and other things are floating down the river, and these people started to holler in there, and we was trying to help them. There wasn't much you could do.
People were screaming. You could hear them hollering for help.
The Silver Bridge collapsed catastrophically, completely disappearing beneath the river's waters. 46 people died, making it the worst bridge accident in American history at the time. For days, rescue workers pulled smashed cars and bodies from the river.
The question of what caused this bridge
I agree.
to collapse is right now still of absolutely no import to us whatever. It did fall. There are bodies still out there in the river. We are right now interested in getting those bodies recovered from the river.
The bridge was gone. There was debris all over the water, and it was so cold. It was the coldest day we had that year. That was the 15th of December of '67.
In the following weeks, the Department of Transportation conducted a detailed investigation of the collapse and blamed it on a steel pin that was improperly manufactured. The Silver Bridge was nearly 40 years old, poorly maintained, and had for many years been carrying far more traffic than it had been designed for.
Smells
Quite
like
simply,
bullshit
they
to me.
concluded it was a miracle that the bridge stood for as long as it did.
People said it was overloaded, but it wasn't. It was just normal traffic, and there was a snow shower, you know, flurries. It was kind of well, the sun had gone down and all, but never dreaming something like this would happen.
It's eerie.
100%.
What took place to cause that bridge to fall? I don't know why. All I can say is a lot of people lost a lot of loved ones.
Rumors quickly began to spread that the collapse was connected to all the strange sightings.
You look at the Silver Bridge crashing, and people talk about the Mothman as being this banshee before the bridge collapses, telling people that they should be aware something's going to happen. Mothman, 13 months, you know, from the 15th to the 15th, over those 13 months. And as we know from the analysis of the bridge collapsing, it was pin number 13 that collapsed the bridge.
Some people theorized that the bridge collapse had been caused by whatever was causing these strange events, and that this has been done as a distraction.
How many people want to try to tell me that's not a ritual? Tell me that doesn't have something to do with loosh, a collection of energy, the timing, the dreams, the telepathic control, the voices on the phone calls, the men in black showing up, people being told, don't speak on this, the female reporter who died working on it. I haven't even dug into what happened to her. All of this collective. And then I do agree that has very similar qualities to a recent collapse. Think about it. Things tend to repeat, and certain people tend to, you know, not just people, but groups and things tend to stick to the same kind of MO. 13 and 13. What do you think?
Some people said that when everyone's attention was focused on the bridge and the rescue efforts, that a great deal of UFO activity was seen departing the TNT area and had not been seen since.
There are also individuals
Bingo.
that said they saw the
Bingo.
Mothman under the bridge during the collapse.
Welcome in, Jay. Glad you showed up to work. Appreciate it.
Bridge. And he said he seen the Mothman. Well, he come up there.
Thank you, Ted. Yep.
To George Johnson,
That's where I'm at.
the sheriff at that time, and it came out in the paper that so and so had seen this Mothman on the bridge. Well, in less than a week, the bridge fell. So things like that.
What was sighted on the bridge were two men in low Oxfords and black jackets climbing around the bridge. Now I suspect they must have been FBI agents, and I suspect that they knew what I knew, that something was going to happen, but they knew it was the bridge. I didn't know it was the bridge.
Didn't know that.
Some tried to come up with scientific explanations for the Mothman. Skeptics claimed that it was a mass hallucination that had been cleared up by the shock of the bridge tragedy. Others blamed it on a curse placed on the town by a Shawnee chieftain over 200 years before.
Quit blaming us for shit.
Claimed that it had really been just a big bird all along, a sandhill crane. This species superficially matches descriptions of the creature, but eyewitnesses disagree.
Wrong color.
We ain't that stupid.
Too skinny. I've seen pictures of sandhill cranes on TV, and no. In my opinion, Professor Smith from West Virginia University was 100% wrong.
I'm with you, brother, and your car.
Say that it was a stork or something dumb like that, and some people said it was a giant owl. Well, I've seen large owls, but I've never seen an owl that as big as a man.
It was also later revealed that the TNT area, where many of the sightings took place, had been horribly polluted. Many of the ingredients that had gone into making the munitions had been dumped and left to seep into the local ponds. In the 1970s, scientists declared the area an environmental disaster. It is still one of the top EPA Superfund cleanup sites. So some wondered if perhaps the creature was some sort of mutant bird, an abomination caused by the horrible effects of toxic waste.
No.
But that didn't explain the strange lights in the sky, the abject terror felt by eyewitnesses weeks and even years after their encounter, even today.
Yep.
You know what you saw. You saw it. But what was it? Where did it come from? These are questions you ask yourself all the time. Is there something out there that, stalking us? I mean, you can't deny what you saw. It's just very hard to explain,
To me, that's probably one of the closest.
I mean, that's something
that
strange. They're
combines all the
going
sightings.
the next. Why did they come here in the first place?
Too many people saw it, whatever it was, for it not to be something.
And it has been seen again. Sightings have been reported around the world since then, always just before a major disaster. Mexico City, 1985. Reports of huge, strange birds appear in the weeks before a destructive earthquake rocks the city. Chernobyl, 1986. Locals describe frightening encounters with a bird-like man over the course of several months. Encounters that end with a devastating accident at the nuclear power plant.
It was going on all over the world. It still is. And I've gotten tons and tons of mail from people claiming similar experiences or thanking me because suddenly they realized what they had really experienced, what they'd really gone through.
Yeah, good old-fashioned handwriting, Aunt Edna. Look at that.
A lot of people all over the world have seen these things and been bewildered by them.
Dozens of sightings have been reported in just the last few years. And in September of 2001, an eyewitness came forward claiming to have seen an enormous bird-like creature in western Pennsylvania.
It was just like one of those 8mm black and white horror films.
Perhaps once we are able to overcome our fear and look beyond the mere manifestations, humanity will finally glimpse the real truth. For now, however, there is no rational explanation for what has happened and seems to still be happening.
I'm sure it's happening somewhere in the world right now. It has always happened.
I really understand that people are skeptical of Mothman. I would be, if I hadn't been doing this for 40-some years. But for these folks, they interacted with an extraordinary situation that they couldn't explain. And we know from looking at those folks, talking to them, looking at their histories, looking at the whole framework that Mothman fits in, that something very real happened there. We don't know what it is, perhaps, but we know it was real.
The only thing I'd have to say is keep an open mind, because someday it could happen
Of some kind.
And then if you try to tell somebody, what are you going to do if they laugh at you? Or if they call you a kook, that you're imagining, or you're trying to cause chaos, but it actually did happen. what if? And it's a big question.
Point Pleasant and around the world. It's been seen before, and it will be seen again.
The poor Ohio River.
What will you do if you see it? Will your friends and family believe you? Will you believe yourself?
The unknown is out there.
I believe me.
The universe does not exist as we think it exists. And we don't exist as we think we exist.
I agree.
These entities are more advanced than us. Why don't they just come right out and tell us what's on their minds?
You're more advanced than a cockroach. Have you ever tried explaining yourself to one of them?
I'm using that. Because to them, that must be what they think of us, whoever they are. And that can get pretty scary, you know, when you think about it. What Keel said there. We're not even what we think. This world is different than we think. So if you just think about it as energy, you take the fear out of it. You think about it as energy. You know, as light workers, you can manipulate energy. You're in charge of your own energy. You allow certain energy in and you expel certain energy. Take it in, let it go. Okay? That's in any practice. No matter what you call it, it's what you're doing. Right? We know that we have the energy. Why does it work when, say, you have an earthbound spirit comes at you and you yell at it and it repels it? Whatever you say, if you direct it at them, get out, stop it, and because you've directed your energy. Now imagine something that can manipulate energy and it's learned how to feed. Just think of it cold like that. I know it sounds awful, and it is. But in order to deal with it as a light worker, you kind of don't let it drag you down past that line where we try to stay above with our thoughts and our energy, right? You just think about it for what it is. It's a dark energy, and it needs dark energy to feed, and it needs all that fear and whatever. Do things exist that cause a tragedy to build up that fear and do what I said in the beginning of the show, where it's doing its own little spell, its own little manipulation, its own little coordinated dark opera, and its crescendo, its final act is to, okay, how do you fight it? With the light, every time. Be aware of it, name it, put it in its place, put it in your bag, because we're just as strong, if not stronger, because we beat it every time. Once you know it, you call it by name, and you stop letting them put everything in a separate category, so we can separate everything, just like it tries to separate people, so we'll argue and fight with each other. It's like that story about the ants, right? You've got the red ants, the black ants. As long as everything's peaceful, everything is good. You know, color has nothing to do with it. It's just something different. And till you somebody shakes the jar and they fight. Same thing. So you don't feed them. In the intro, I played that video of the one I made with the fog. It's in the fog. Something's in the fog, you know. Just saying, it's my way of saying it's out there. But you know how to repel it, you know. And once you name it, and you see it, and you see that all these things are collected, just put them in that dark category of, yeah, they have abilities. Yeah, they have, you know, they can manipulate energy, but we're not going to feed the feeders. We're not going to feed the feeders. There's lots of different feeders. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, that's why you get no fear, right? So what is it? Don't know. I've had a lot of really wise people on different subjects that you can bring into this, you know, talking about dogmen and, you know, Bigfoot and all the different names, you know. I can tell you a little bit about that. That's another thing. It causes a lot of confusion. Most tribes have their own name for what's around them, just like they would call a squirrel something different than you. But I can tell you this, that most tribal Native American tribes, now I'm no expert, but have their own name, but most of them have something to do with calling Bigfoot or, you know, Sasquatch, whatever you want to. It means the people, the tribe, the woodland people, those type of names. And that tells you everything you need to know. They belong there just like they do. They're just another tribe. So think on that. That's a trip. And I think it connects all in with this. So I learned a lot tonight about John Keel. And I thank everybody that was throwing in ideas and thoughts. And, you know, and that's how we learn. That's how we learn, because I'm learning right along. But I am more convinced sitting here now that this is not a separate incident, that it goes along with many other incidents that match it exactly. You know, I mean, I can't say exactly, but so close, so parallel, with the same result, with the same buildup. There's something there. As well as when Steve and I and so many other people have come on here and talked about humanoids seen in over Chicago. So many reports, and so many other places. So if we stop, you know, thinking, okay, Mothman is not the same as the Chicago humanoids or the same as this. Doesn't have to be the same one. It could be a whole lot of different creatures that are just a little bit different, but all there for the same reason, because they've learned what they need. They're going to cause fear, and they're going to harness that energy or whatever they're after. And if we don't recognize it, I can assure you, my friends, that those who work in the dark, oh, they see it, and they're not going to let it go to waste. Just like certain events that have happened here recently. And I don't just mean bridges collapsing or trains falling in the Ohio River or wherever it may be, or you know, miraculously disappearing ammonium nitrate, you know, like what, 60 tons of it? Oh, it trickled out slowly along the way, you know, we'll be more careful next time. Really? That stuff can be tracked. You know, we have to stop believing stupid lies, letting them get away with it. We have to keep it in the light. And that's what we're doing. Keep it in the light, fight it with the light, be the light. No fear. But this was interesting. I learned a lot. And I think we're going to delve into it probably next Monday with Steve. I always want to go over stuff with him because he knows so much about, you know, John Keel. And I hope he feels better. I hope he's not, you know, green anymore, a little titch of green. I hope he didn't have food poisoning, because that could be a really rough ride. And so we're praying for him. We're sending him good thoughts and energy to the Stocktons, and that's really awful. But you know what? It had supposed to be this way, and then we can continue on, because I think there's more to talk about here. I love the line that kind of puts things in perspective. All those little flashes you saw of the movie. It is available on the inner tubes. Look on YouTube. You know, I don't know what your carrier is. Try to find it there. Give it a watch and see what you think. That way we can talk more about it next Monday with Steve. And also this documentary. I'm really sorry about the sound. I don't know how that happened. It wasn't, you know, it was my copy of somebody else's copy of somebody else's copy. Some of that stuff's very old. We're lucky to be able to still see it, you know. And then I can show something from like 1938 and it'll be crystal clear. I don't know how that happens. But anyway, that's available. It's called In Search of Mothman. It is available on YouTube on many different channels. Look it up, watch it if you want. Pull more out of that. The John Keel interviews, there's a ton of them across the interwebs. And I'd watch them. Watch the one that you're interested in if you're more into the UFOs, you know, or whatever. But on this one, there's a lot of little things here. The way people's eyes turned red. There was that's in the movie, and it's portrayed a lot in the movie. as well as the phone calls that were coming in on that frequency and a certain, you know, vibration as well. It wasn't human. The messages it was leaving and stuff. It's crazy. The whole fact that the men in black kept showing up, harassing people, trying to drag people into cars, hauling them off. There's more to this story, folks. But again, don't get hyper focused on just saying, you know, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and what was going on there with the you know, the plant and the stuff leaking into nature and all that, because I've heard people way go off on that tangent as far as, okay, it was something from the radiation, and it's not just in Point Pleasant. It's all around the globe. These things are all around the globe. They want you to separate them so you don't figure out, I think, what John Keel was trying to tell us. It's all connected. And he's not the only one. You know, we've talked about that before. So, wait, am I going oh, sneeze. I couldn't hit the button. Sorry. I didn't mean to do that in the mic. I felt it coming. I couldn't stop it. But anyway, very interesting. Look more into the Mothman if you're interested in that. I'm going to watch the movie again. I'm going to tell you it's a damn sight better than that Lighthouse movie. Now, why any of you watch that after I said it was gross and horrible and dark and nasty? Because it was bad. I couldn't even get through it for Willem Dafoe. He's a crazy little son of a gun. But anyway, no, that's not a good movie. But this one, I'm going to give it another shot and see. Because I think it really did try to put in a lot of that dark mystery I wasn't picking up before that I didn't understand. I'm going to try to pull out some more. But even, like I said, with the eyes, they would swell up and they'd get real red and they'd ooze. And some of it didn't go away. Some guys got scar from it. All he did was look at this thing. So there's some kind of horrible, thank you, sweetheart. There's something a lot deeper here, folks. You know, a lot deeper. And I think it's happening all over. And I think, you know, Ron Murphy might be a great one to talk to about this. And we're going to get him on soon. We've got some more people coming on. Oh, maybe we can't do this next week. We'll have to maybe do it Sunday. Maybe I can get Steve to do a double header. You know, maybe if he's feeling bouncy and trouncy and, you know, maybe we can get a double header because I'd really love to get him on this. Thank you guys for being here. We seem to squeak through it. And again, sorry for the quality of the thing. Maybe you can find a better copy on it because I think it's worth another watch. It's a good little documentary. And, you know, new absolute intrigued by Mr. Keel. And I'm glad he got to do what he loved. And I think there's so much more to unpack there. I think I've only, you know, scratched the surface. And I think I'm ready to, you know, click into that because it matches everything we were talking about last week and the week before here. So, hey, Dexter, welcome in. You're just in time to say goodnight. So, thank you guys. Sorry I kept you a little late, but I wanted to get all that in and see what you guys were saying about everything. And it's always a pleasure sharing this new information. You know, some of it was very new to me, and some of it I just knew a little bit about. So that's kind of cool. We're learning it, you know, together and stuff. Everybody's ideas, but I wouldn't let them tell you that it was just, you know, something just happened and, you know, was kind of a one-off and one and done. And we don't know what it was. And it might have been a banshee or a harbinger. It was trying to help people. And you don't help people by giving them, you know, that kind of manifestations to make them crazy and to drive that kind of fear into them, to freeze them and make them land on kids and have the ability to follow a car at 60 miles an hour and, all the other impending doom feelings and everything that people had. That's an inherent evil. And when something shows you what it is, believe them. You know, there's no other way around this. I just think we've been getting this very compartmentalized information and they're keeping everything separate when, again, as I've said 1,000 times, it's all connected. I love you guys. Let me find you something fun. Wait. Ted, you've been very good tonight. Would you like your would you like to see your girl? If you're new here and you've never seen Ted's girl, how is it that you describe her, Ted? She's skinny, but she's cute. Is that it? Tell you what, you can wear the hell out of a tutu. So I love y'all. Watch out for the skeleton death fairy. Be cool. Be good humans. I love you. And thank you, Ted. For the honey. Thank you, sweetie. Honey for my honey. Thank you, Ted. And may you and Lord Connor have a nice sleep now. Go to bed, put the tea away, and no whiskey balls for you, my friend. But I will give you a little skeleton death fairy. I love y'all. Thanks for helping me through it. We did okay. We did it. Come on now. Come on. We kicked the mule. Good night, everybody.